Okay.
Excellent. Yeah. So the recording has started, and we're doing this in celebration of the 50th anniversary of Sydney Banks's enlightenment experience. Individuals that have had impact by the three principles understanding are sharing their insights and stories of this transformation. Please welcome Cathy Casey. Hi, Cathy.
Hey, Rick. I'm so glad you're doing this with me. I'll try to keep it together.
Okay. Uh, as you know, we've got a series of questions, and everybody is really interested in what you might be saying about them in reflection. So, if you're ready, I'll start asking the questions then.
Sure, I'm ready to go.
All right. So the first one is, could you briefly share what your life looked like before you had your first insight into the three principles?
You know, it was kind of interesting when I saw the question. I had to reflect. I had to re-look at how I was before I learned the principles. And it was kind of fun doing that because sometimes I think we don't appreciate how different we do become until we do look at, well, how was Cathy Casey before she learned the principles? And the first indicator that I had that something had changed in me, I was in graduate school finishing my master's degree in clinical psychology, which of course, as soon as I got the degree, would walk away from that field. But my fellow students, one day we were just hanging out and they said, wow, Cathy, you're so much softer. And I looked at them and at first I went, ew. I didn't like hearing that I was so much softer because I had lived my life to be, kind of as a social advocate, women's rights, civil rights. I've had this. I was a social worker by trade. Um, I felt I had to be tough, to deal with what was thrown in front of me, to supporting people, helping people. I'm the oldest of 10.
Wow. Yeah.
So from the get go, I was in charge, so it's kind of like a drill sergeant. In fact, I got hired one time way back when in Atlanta, Georgia. They were hiring correctional officers / counselors in this halfway house for women, first one in the state of Georgia. And I interviewed for the job, and I was the only white person applying. I was very young. I was 22. I weighed probably 103 pounds soaking wet. And basically, I looked around and I thought, oh, I don't have a chance. And then I ended up getting hired. And the woman who hired me, who was one of my main mentors, she said, there's something about you. There's something about you. Somehow you just are able to take charge. She just picked up on that from me.
Mhm.
So that worked for me. That worked for take charge, have an edge, get the job done. I got promoted for it. I mean, I was really very accomplished in that mode. And it took me far and wide. But here's the thing, there was a downside to it, which I didn't understand,
Mhm.
because as I reached my 40s, I was pretty much drained. I felt drained a lot, like my energy level. So I had to kind of work over that, kind of compensate, kind of gear myself up to proceed. And so I was pretty much walking around with what I would call a heavy state of mind. But it was so normal for me, I didn't know it was heavy,
Right.
and just operated from that.
Right.
And so as I learned the principles, the effect is you lighten up. So in spite of myself, I lightened up.
Hmm.
But the other thing that happened was all this emotion started coming through, which scared me. I mean, I would start crying at the drop of the hat. I was exhausted all the time. And I was so grateful I had Roger Mills as a mentor. And when we'd have we did this program with him over a year, and we'd do this big check-in, and people are sharing their insights and how great things are. And I'm sitting there like, well, I'm going the opposite way. I'm feeling more depressed. I'm crying a lot. And he said, oh, Cathy, it's okay. The system's clearing itself out. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, all that stuff that you've been walking around in is just coming through. I was so relieved when he told me that. Like,
Mhm.
oh, I'm not falling apart. I'm not getting worse. He said, no, you're just, all that stuff is just coming through. And I do remember not allowing myself to have any emotions. Like, I don't want people to see me cry.
Yeah,
I don't want people to see that I don't know what I'm doing or that I'm insecure. I was so defended that as I was learning the principles, that started just coming off of me. It
yeah,
just started to dissipate. And so for about a year and a half, 2 years, I went through this emotional roller coaster. But again, because I understood it, I allowed it to happen.
right,
And so this being soft meant, wow, I can just be at ease with myself and be accepting of my humanity. And so that would be the big difference. Now I still go through my ups and downs, but because I understand what that is, I'm at ease with it.
right.
I'm at peace with however I'm doing. So yeah, and people would say things like, Cathy, you come off like you're an intense New Yorker. Some people told me they were intimidated by me, which I'm like, me? Cathy, you're intimidated by me? I had to stop mentoring people because I was in that, I had that edge.
Right,
I
right.
had that edge. So I realized, I'm not qualified right now to mentor people on how to teach principles. So I had to back up.
So I'm
And after a couple of years, I realized, oh, I think I'm ready to mentor people now. Yeah.
so I'm curious. So you have this edge. So what was your first insight?
Okay. So my first insight was actually, um, my first insight was when I first heard the principles. I'm sitting there wanting to leave this session. It was a room full of 80 people.
Mhm.
And I was just there to look good to get a job. This woman invited me. I thought, well, I better show up because if I'm going to get a job with her, I better, look good. And so I had one foot out the door thinking, oh, good, I'm going to slip out. It was Joe Bailey and Mark Howard. They were on the stage. And I'm like, okay, looking at the clock, when
Yeah.
can I slip out? Should I wait for, I was just really not there. And for some reason, something caught my ear. Like, what are they saying? Then I'm looking to leave. What are they saying? By 12 o'clock, I got hit.
Hmm.
Like, this is it. I literally, it explained my life. It pretty much, oh, this is why all of this occurred. So that was my first hit, I would call.
Okay.
But my first real insight, because after that, I started, okay, I want to know more. I want to get it. Tell me more. I had questions. I was analyzing it. I was comparing it. And finally, a voice in my head said, Cathy, shut up. Roger was teaching the class, and I was ready to raise my hand one more time. And my teachers were so patient with me. And as I'm raising my hand, this little voice inside said, Cathy, shut up. And at first I'm like, who said that to me? And I really, oh, I said that to me. And I stopped. I just stopped.
Hmm.
And a few weeks later, I'm driving somewhere and I'm at the red light. And all of a sudden, I slip into this amazing feeling with nothing else going on. And I said, oh, that's what they're talking about. That's what this is. And that was it. From that moment on, that was my reference point. Oh, I'm connected to this limitless, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not that I have to get there, it's in me already. And that's what I realized. Oh, if I could sit at a red light and I slip into it, that's when that was what I call a life-changing insight. And so from that point on, that's what I would point people to, that we have this already. And the reason why you don't feel it is because of how this thought thing works through us. But basically, that's when I really saw it for myself.
That was sort of like the turning point, so to speak, right? Right.
Yeah. The first one was the hit.
Yeah.
Like, this is true.
Yeah.
Well, this is true. Absolutely the truth. So I got that. In fact, I raised my hand and I said, okay, 4 years of graduate education in psychology and $45,000 is going out the window right now. Is that true? And Mark and Joe, who both have PhDs in clinical psychology, they go, oh yeah, that's true. I go, just so that we're clear about that. I mean, I saw that,
Yeah,
but I still appreciate I have my clinical training because it does come in handy sometimes,
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
if somebody's really suffering. But I realized then, oh, my life is going to take a whole different path. I saw it right then and there.
So, uh, how has your life changed then?
Well, I think what's different is before I used to live in a heavy state of mind. I used to live in chaos. I used to live in, you know, kind of being serious and righteous and intense and even in my personal relationships, you know, I'm in charge or I know better. I was kind of in that mode,
Mm.
kind of this heavy responsibility mode. And since then, today, I may visit that mode every now and then, but I don't live in it.
Mm.
See, before I used to visit peace of mind, calm, probably when I go to Hawaii or if I had a good meal or, you know, these moments of having this good feeling. After the principles over time, I started to live in calm and well-being, taking life as it comes. And I would visit intensity or I would visit upsetness, but I don't live in that anymore. And that's the difference. I'm very light. And the work that I've done over the years has been with people in very dire circumstances.
Hmm.
And before I knew the principles, that would impact me. It would really take hold on me to witness people suffering the way they suffer. Now, when I work with people around the principles, my lightness is what helps and impacts people, appreciating the suffering, but my lightness of being really makes a difference. And of course, it makes a difference in my own personal life. And right now, I'm so grateful that I have this knowing because I'm enjoying my grandkids in a
Mm.
way that I know I probably wouldn't have enjoyed before. I'm just, they're just my heart. And I'm just looking at them and appreciating them and learning from them.
Mm.
So I'm very different today. Now I'm still Cathy. You know, I'm not and calm, you know, because in the beginning, I didn't fit into the mold. You know, everybody was very low key and quiet. And then I come along and people are like, oh, who is this? Who is this? Thank goodness Sydney Banks trusted me enough and knew that the work I was doing obviously was proof that I was having some kind of grounding. But the bottom line was, yeah, I didn't fit the mold. So it's like we don't change. We're still the same people. We just internally, we're just lighter.
Hmm.
We're just, and we take life as it comes. And we know we have a sense of a place to look when things are not going well. We know where to look now.
Right. Yeah. 100%. 100%. So, so how do you see this understanding changing the field of mental health and our understanding of human spirit?
Yeah. Well, my work over the years has been in so many different environments with so many different issues, you know, drug addiction, homelessness, you know, people killing other people. I mean, really serious stuff.
Yeah.
And what I've come to see over the years as I've worked with all these different folks, also people, successful people in the corporate world, in working for our county government here, people who, you know, have nice lives. And what I realize is what makes a difference is people's level of understanding or people's level of consciousness comes up. And as that happens, that's what's going to change the world. That's what changed me, and that's what changes others. So it's not that you know, we got to work on all these issues specifically, but just see in general, it doesn't matter what the issue is. I mean, of course, you're suffering. If you're a drug addict, you're suffering. But in general, I'm not focused on the issue. I'm focused on we all have something inside us that we all know already, and we just need to wake up to it. And however that happens, to, you know, if I'm teaching the principles or somebody reads a book and they get impacted, every human being has the capacity to have a jump in a level of consciousness. And that's what's needed. So when I look at when things are not going well in the world, and they aren't, at first I get caught up and I get angry, and, like what's going on in Ukraine, Putin, I just want to beat up on him, how can you do this to innocent people? But then I have to step back and realize this is a level of consciousness. This is a level of understanding. And innocently, it makes sense for him to be doing what he's doing in his own mind.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't understand the role of thought, or what thought really is, or what consciousness really is, or what mind really is, then whatever you're thinking, we become attached to that, and it becomes our reality. So when I step back, I can understand why Putin's doing what he's doing, or I can understand why an inmate killed another person. They even told me that. Cathy, if I had known this, I wouldn't be here right now. So to me, understanding our level of consciousness, that to me is the answer. And so I'm looking at people's understanding of life as opposed to what their issues are.
Right.
And I think that's what, if we could have more people doing that, that's what's going to impact the world. People come to you, they're going to come to you with whatever they have, whatever issue they have. But ultimately, when they get beyond, it's just their issue, and they see it's beyond that. As you said earlier when we talked before the recording, it's a rippling effect. It's a rippling effect. So that's how I see these principles in terms of being a way to address whatever the issues are, mental health or violence or homelessness or anything you want to talk about. Of course, we do have physical needs that need to be provided. Like homeless people need to get off the street. I mean, they absolutely need to, physically get food, shelter, and clothing.
Yeah.
That has to be addressed. But with that comes a level of understanding, and that's what's going to impact. And I'll just say one cute little story about that. Okay. The head of mental health here in Santa Clara County, and this is a huge county, they got a big federal grant, a chunk of money from the feds to deal with the homeless situation and the shelters. But they had to write a proposal to receive the money. And the thing they asked for is you need to interview the people who would be receiving the services, because we want to hear from them what they think they need. So they went out and interviewed all these different groups to incorporate that into the proposal. And every one of the groups talked about, well, whatever you provide for us, you better make sure the principles are included. Mm. And she's like, well, what do you mean the principles? Well, what are you talking about? And she sort of heard about them because of the other department in the health and hospital system was sponsoring the work we're doing. And so she started hearing him. And so she calls Linda Ramos, who is running our program in the principals, the 3 Principal Services Division. It was a paid department in Santa Clara County. We need you to participate in our proposal. Could you write up something about the 3 principles in order for us to receive federal money? So to me, that's amazing that the people who are going to receive the services, because they have been participating in our programs, because we offered free services, weekly meet, people could just come in off the street to my Thursday night class, or my colleagues are going out to the shelters and teaching the principles. They're the ones who came forward and said, this is the most important thing. And so what can I say?
Yeah. Wonderful.
That says it right there.
Yeah.
So absolutely. I'm just so grateful that I stayed in that room to hear it was a 4-day seminar. Yeah. And I'm so grateful that I had the wisdom to stay there and hear it.
Nice.
And thanks, Rick, for asking me the questions.
That's beautiful. Well, thank you very much, Cathy. We will thank you again for answering and being you.
Well, it's the only one I can be. I can only be me. And, I say that to people. They say, Cathy, I want to teach the way you teach. I go, no. You want to be you. And Sydney Banks always said, just do you. Just do you.
Excellent. Thanks again. And
All right.